I came home from the hospital and discovered my room was empty. My clothes, my antique vanity, the silver-framed photographs of my late husband, everything was gone. I stood in the doorway of the house I had owned for 40 years, staring at the bare hardwood floors, listening to the hollow echo of my own breathing. I pulled my cell phone from my purse and called my daughter-in-law Emily. She answered on the second ring, her voice dripping with that specific, manufactured sweetness she always used when she was trying to mask her deceit. "Where are my things?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. Emily sighed heavily, adopting the tone of a burdened caregiver. "We moved you out to a care facility, Granny. The doctors always say you need round-the-clock supervision. The house was sold. The new owners are moving in tomorrow. It really is for your own good, and the money will pay for your nurses." I thanked her, ended the call without listening to her continued justifications, and texted my lawyer a single, prearranged phrase: "Proceed with Project Warthog." To understand the magnitude of Emily's arrogance, you have to understand the energy she brought into my son's life when they married 7 years ago. My son, Owen, was always easily manipulated, a man who preferred taking the path of least resistance rather than standing firm on any moral principle. Emily recognized this weakness immediately and weaponized it. She possessed an insatiable appetite for the appearance of wealth, but with absolutely no desire to earn it. For years, she dropped constant, aggressive hints about my 4-bedroom property in the historic district, complaining about the tight square footage of their rented condo, and suggesting that an elderly widow like myself had no business occupying such valuable real estate. She wanted my house, or more specifically, she wanted the equity locked inside the brick and mortar. When I was diagnosed with a severe arterial blockage requiring a bypass surgery and a mandatory 6-week stay in a cardiac rehabilitation clinic, Emily saw her window of opportunity. She volunteered to hold onto my house keys to water my plants and collect my mail. She assured me Owen would handle my minor bills while I recovered. I handed her the keys, not out of trust, but because I needed her to believe she had finally won. 6 months prior to my surgery, my attorney, Marcus, had warned me that Emily was quietly making inquiries with local real estate agents regarding the property value of my home. She was exploring avenues to force a sale, assuming my upcoming medical leave would leave me heavily medicated, isolated, and legally vulnerable. I did not confront her. Confrontation would have simply forced her to change her tactics. Instead, Marcus and I spent 3 months laying a flawless, invisible trap. We legally transferred the deed of my house into a blind corporate LLC registered in Delaware, a business structure that shielded my name from the public property records while retaining my ownership. When I went into the hospital and handed Emily the keys, she wasted no time. Assuming she could operate in the shadows while I was confined to a hospital bed, she hired an aggressive real estate broker and listed the property on the open market. Because she did not possess a legitimate power of attorney, she resorted to the most brazen, reckless form of real estate fraud imaginable. Marcus monitored the local property listings, tracking her movements in real time. Within 4 days of my surgery, the house hit the market. This is where Project Warthog initiated its first phase. Marcus, acting through the anonymous LLC, immediately swooped in and submitted a massive all-cash offer well above the asking price, demanding a rapid 2-week closing period. Emily, blinded by the prospect of a massive payday, accepted the offer without performing any due diligence on the buyer. She believed she had found a desperate, wealthy corporate investor. To finalize the transaction without my physical presence, she hired an older woman, likely an associate from her local country club, who shared my general physical description, to play the role of the incapacitated mother-in-law. Armed with a forged state identification card bearing my name, this imposter sat at the closing table with the real estate attorneys. In front of a licensed public notary, the imposter signed the fraudulent deed transfer, legally attesting that she was the rightful owner, surrendering the property. Emily and Owen sat right next to her, smiling for the cameras, endorsing the forgery. The funds from the LLC, my own money, routed through the corporate account, were wired directly into a joint bank account controlled by Owen and Emily. They pocketed the cash, packed up my belongings, shoved them into a bleak, state-run nursing facility, and assumed they had successfully executed the perfect crime. They had no idea they had just sold my house back to me. I stood in the empty hallway of my home, the silence broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I did not drive to the care facility where Emily had dumped my belongings, nor did I succumb to the manufactured panic she intended to inflict upon me. Instead, I walked out the front door, locked it with my spare key, and drove directly to Marcus's law firm in the downtown district. When I walked into his office, He was already compiling the thick stack of signed, notarized closing documents the title company had forwarded to our LLC. He laid the paperwork across his desk, pointing specifically to the signature line on the final transfer deed. The ink was dark and confident, a near-perfect forgery of my handwriting, sitting right next to the official raised seal of the notary public. Emily had left nothing to chance. She had orchestrated a highly coordinated, multi-layered federal crime involving identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. By directing the funds across state lines into her personal accounts, she had elevated a local property dispute into a severe federal offense, falling directly under the jurisdiction of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Marcus picked up the phone and dialed a direct contact he maintained within the local FBI field office, a special agent who specialized in white-collar financial crimes and elder abuse. Because the evidence was absolute and undeniable, we possessed the forged documents, the recorded wire transfers, and the legal proof of the blind LLC ownership. The Bureau did not need to spend months building a circumstantial case. The trap had captured her in the act. The agent requested we bring the physical documents to the field office immediately. We spent the next 4 hours sitting in a sterile federal interview room, methodically walking the agents through Emily's timeline. We detailed her initial inquiries into my property value, her insistence on managing my house keys during my surgery, and the sudden, aggressive listing of the property the moment I was admitted to the cardiac unit. We provided the agents with the contact information for the title company and the real estate broker Emily had manipulated, ensuring law enforcement could quickly pull the security footage from the closing table to positively identify the imposter she had hired to forge my signature. The federal agents were not merely interested, they were furious. Exploiting the medical vulnerability of a senior citizen to execute a multi-million-dollar real estate theft triggered a highly aggressive response from the Bureau. By late afternoon, the federal machinery was in full motion. The FBI immediately contacted Emily and Owen's banking institution, presenting the preliminary evidence of wire fraud and invoking emergency federal protocols to freeze the joint account holding the stolen funds. Emily and Owen were suddenly cut off from the cash they believed secured their future. They could not withdraw a single dollar, transfer the money offshore, or even use their debit cards to purchase a cup of coffee. Simultaneously, Marcus initiated the civil side of our retaliation. He drafted an emergency injunction to formally invalidate the fraudulent sale, notifying the county clerk that the deed transfer had been executed under a forged identity. Because the blind LLC that purchased the house was legally controlled by me, the title reversal was seamless. I never lost actual ownership of the property. I merely allowed Emily to construct a paper trail that proved her criminal intent. I drove back to my house that evening, ordered a new bedroom set to replace the furniture she had discarded, and slept soundly in my own home, undisturbed by the catastrophic legal storm gathering directly over my son and daughter-in-law. The next morning, Emily arrived at my house. She pulled her leased SUV into my driveway, marching up the front steps accompanied by 2 burly men she had hired from a local moving company. She was expecting to meet the new corporate owners, likely planning to offer a charming apology for leaving a few boxes in the garage and attempting to establish a friendly rapport with the wealthy investors she believed she had swindled. I stood in the kitchen, drinking my morning coffee, watching her through the front window as she confidently unlocked the front door with the key she had refused to return. She stepped into the foyer, instructing the movers to wait on the porch. She turned the corner into the kitchen and stopped dead in her tracks. The arrogant smile vanished from her face, replaced by a look of profound, paralyzing confusion when she saw me standing by the counter, wearing my bathrobe, holding a ceramic mug. She looked at the empty walls, then back at me, her mind desperately trying to reconcile the reality of my presence with the fraudulent paperwork she had signed 3 days prior. "What are you doing here?" Emily stammered, her voice lacking its usual commanding edge. "The new owners are supposed to be taking possession today. You need to leave before they arrive and call the police." I took a slow sip of my coffee, relishing the absolute terror beginning to form in her eyes as the pieces of the puzzle slowly started to align in her mind. I set the mug down on the granite counter and offered her a cold, uncompromising stare. "The new owners are already here, Emily," I replied, my voice steady and resolute. "I am the primary shareholder of the Delaware LLC you sold my house to. You didn't sell my home to a stranger. You sold it to me. And you left a federal paper trail a mile long to do it." The color drained from Emily's face so rapidly she appeared physically ill, her hands trembling as the sheer magnitude of her miscalculation crushed the breath from her lungs. She stumbled backward against the doorframe, her eyes darting frantically around the room, as if searching for an escape route from a trap that had already snapped shut. "You set me up?" she whispered, her voice cracking with rising panic. I did not offer her a shred of sympathy or a dramatic explanation. I simply nodded. "I gave you the keys to my house, Emily. You chose to hire an imposter, forge my signature, and commit federal wire fraud. I did not force you to break the law. I merely provided the rope, and you eagerly tied the noose." The silence in the kitchen was shattered by the sound of tires violently screeching into my driveway. Emily turned her head toward the front window just in time to see 3 dark, unmarked federal vehicles block her luxury SUV. 6 FBI agents stepped out of the cars, wearing dark windbreakers bearing the Bureau's gold lettering. They moved with swift, tactical precision, bypassing the confused movers on the porch and stepping directly into my foyer. The lead agent, a tall man with a stern, uncompromising expression, locked his eyes on Emily. He did not ask her name. He simply pulled a set of steel handcuffs from his belt and stated, "Emily Dexter, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and real estate fraud." Emily collapsed into hysterics, screaming for Owen, weeping aggressively, and thrashing her arms as the agent secured her wrists behind her back. They ignored her theatrics, reading her the Miranda rights in a flat, clinical tone while escorting her out of my house and shoving her into the back of a federal vehicle. Owen was arrested 40 minutes later at his corporate office, escorted through the lobby in handcuffs while his colleagues watched in stunned silence. The federal prosecution moved with brutal efficiency. Because they had utilized the banking system to transfer the stolen funds and the postal service to mail the fraudulent deeds, the charges triggered mandatory minimum federal sentencing guidelines. During the arraignment, their defense attorney attempted to argue that the incident was merely a misunderstanding regarding a family inheritance. But the U.S. attorney immediately produced the security footage from the title company, showing the hired imposter signing my name while Emily and Owen smiled for the cameras. The physical evidence was insurmountable. The imposter, terrified by the prospect of spending her twilight years in a federal penitentiary, immediately accepted a plea deal, testifying against Emily and Owen in exchange for a reduced sentence. She detailed exactly how Emily had recruited her, provided the forged identification, and coached her on how to mimic my mannerisms at the closing table. Faced with decades in federal prison, Owen and Emily both accepted harsh plea agreements. Emily, recognized by the court as the primary architect of the fraud, was sentenced to 8 years in a federal correctional facility. Owen received a 5-year sentence for his complicity and his role in managing the stolen funds. Because they were both convicted of severe financial felonies, their assets were liquidated by the government, and they were permanently barred from holding any fiduciary positions or professional licenses upon their eventual release. I never visited them in prison. I retrieved my personal belongings from the dilapidated care facility, where they had abandoned them, restored my house to its original state, and resumed my quiet life in the historic district. I spent my mornings tending to my garden, and my evenings sitting on the back porch, finally unburdened by the parasitic greed that had infected my family for 7 years. I proved exactly what they failed to understand. Assuming an older woman is vulnerable simply because she is recovering from surgery is a fatal miscalculation, especially when that woman has the patience to let you construct your own prison entirely out of your own arrogance.